What's new and exciting? Let's find out. This weekend's UFC card. UFC Fight Night Santos versus Ankalaev. What's actually exciting on this card? This card's actually sneaky good, right? So at face value, there's not a lot of colossal fights, but if you know what you're looking at, this is a good fucking card, right? This has a lot of potential for some really, really, really good fights. Your main event is Thiago Santos versus Magomed Ankalaev. Ankalaev 16-1. I believe that only loss is like a DQ or something like that. But honestly, I'm talking out of my ass at this very moment. His only loss is to the Bear Jew, Paul Craig. Bear Jew was able to, triangle choke him, but the Bear Jew is something else. And then you got Thiago Santos, who's 22-9, right? This is kind of a crossroads fight, right? The Thiago Santos has been towards the top of the division for a little while now. Having fought John Jones to a debatable loss. Many people out there thought that Santos won the fight or could have won the fight, and he decimated at least one, if not both, of his knees very early in that fight. He threw a kick, and his foot didn't rotate, and the rest of his leg did, right? He effectively heel hooked himself. Right, but like standing, all sorts of stupid shit. Right, so that's gonna be a dope fight. Magomed Ankalaev doesn't really get tired. He sets a pace that other people aren't ready for, or he sets a pace that not that people aren't ready for. It's not like a Colby Covington type thing, right? It's almost the exact opposite. Ankalaev slows things down, right? He makes it very difficult for you to work at the pace that you want to work at. Your co-main event is Marlon Moraes versus Song Yadong. That fight, I like Marlon a lot. Marlon's a really, really exciting fighter. Marlon has looked like shit since he got back to ATT. Okay. I heard from some reputable people that for Marlon's entire career, he's been seen by the people around him as Edson Barbosa's training partner. And then when you saw Marlon break through and get to the top in the UFC, he wasn't training in a place that saw him like that. He was training with people who referred to him on a regular basis as the best in the world. And he lost that when he moved back to Florida following his best friend since childhood, Edson Barbosa, and training at ATT. And that's not a knock on ATT. But what that is not every gym is for everybody. I asked Matt Brown one time, how did you make it to the top and stay at the top being from a small place? And the first thing he said was, first of all, Ohio's not a small place. So I had to apologize for that because I didn't mean to offend. And second of all, he said he's been to a lot of those big camps. And he said if you go to the wrong place, they can put bad energy in you. And that really resonated with me, right? Song Yadong, I think this dude was undefeated for a while, but he's one of those up-and-comers that's been fed to the wolves. He had like a fight of the year, fight of the century type fight against Cub Swanson at one point. Unless I'm messing up who he is, I would make sure that I know what I'm talking about right there. But this fight is set up for Song Yadong to win, right? UFC is trying to break into the Chinese market. And I'm not saying that Song Yadong is going to win, but I'm telling you, every single fight, the matchmakers have someone in mind that they would prefer to win that fight. Sometimes there's good things that can happen no matter who wins the fight. Oh, yeah. Okay. He was not undefeated when he got to the UFC. But he's been a hot prospect since he got to the UFC. In the UFC, his only loss is to Kyler Phillips. And Kyler Phillips is, if you don't know who Kyler Phillips is, you need to. Go watch his last fight. He fought, his Raulian Paiva fight was very interesting. And before that, he fought, right after that, he fought Marcelo Rojo. I don't know shit about Marcelo Rojo, but he stunted on him for 3 rounds before finishing him in the 3rd, right? Kyler Phillips is a savage. So losing to Kyler Phillips, that's not a bad thing at all, right? Song Yadong has a victory over Chito Oliveira. Yo, he beat Chito Oliveira? I didn't even know that. That's ridiculous. The only fight that he hasn't won since he's been to the UFC was a draw against Cody Stamann. Oh, and that was because he was deducted a point in round 1 due to an illegal knee. So in reality, he won that fight, but, rules and shit. That is a good fight. Song Yadong versus Marlon Moraes is a good fight. Unfortunately, if Marlon loses, he's in a position where he will likely be cut from the UFC. But if Song Yadong wins, he's in a position where they can start pushing him as the next big thing coming out of China. All right. Sadiq Yusuf. This dude was on, I think he was either on Contender Series or was on Ultimate Fighter. He's one of like 16 kids. He comes from Africa and he moved to Maryland. He trains with that dude that everybody hates, Lloyd Irvin. If you don't know why everybody hates Lloyd Irvin, go look into it. I'm not going to be the one to just besmirch his name because I don't actually know the details. But when enough people tell you there's smoke, there's probably a fire. He's fighting Alex Caceres. Alex Caceres has been in the UFC forever. Okay, that's not an easy fight for anybody. Caceres is weird, and he often makes people look worse than they are. But like I said, every fight has someone that's supposed to win. I can't always tell you who that's going to be. Sometimes it's more obvious than others. But from a matchmaking perspective, they have someone that they want to win. In this instance, they want Sadiq Yusuf to beat Alex Caceres. All right. The next fight down is Khalil Roundtree versus Carl Roberson. All right, so I've sparred with Carl a couple of times. Not many times. Okay. The very first time that I sparred Carl, actually before I even ever met Carl, Corey Anderson kept telling me, Carl comes through and Carl knocks out everybody in the gym, in sparring, in practice. He regularly head kicks people and he knocks them out. According to Carl, he doesn't try and knock anybody out. Just shit happens sometimes, right? So I go into spar with Carl, and all I'm thinking is, don't get head kicked. Don't get head kicked. Don't get head kicked. Because Corey's talked about this on day after day after day, over and over and over. Carl head kicks everybody. Carl knocks everybody out. All right, don't get head kicked. Don't get head kicked. Don't get head kicked. The very first thing Carl did, he threw a left cross. It came out so fast, his glove hit me in the eye, and my contact came out on his glove. Perfectly round. Didn't get smushed up. I didn't have time to blink. He hit me so fast, I didn't have time to blink. Right? The next thing he did was kick me in the leg. He kicked me in the leg one time. I didn't walk right for the rest of the week, and I felt it for the next week and a half after that. When Carl gets all the things put together, Carl's going to be serious problems for most people. I don't know him that well. I don't really know his skill set that well. But the little bit that I've seen of Carl, that's a bad motherfucker. I am a little bit nervous for this fight, though, because Carl comes from kickboxing, right? Like he fought in Glory. The last dude that Khalil Roundtree fought that was from Glory was Gokhan Saki. When you fight in kickboxing, you get these giant pillows to hide behind, right? They call them gloves. Same with boxing, right? So you see guys who block like this with a stationary guard. I'm not telling you that Carl is one of those people, but Khalil fought Gokhan Saki, and Gokhan Saki was not prepared for that transition, and Khalil just touched him right through the middle. He had his hands up and got pieced up right through the middle. Khalil hits fucking hard. This fight's also outside of Carl's weight class. Right? Carl typically competes at 185. I wonder why that is. I hear that when he was coming up, he did all of his fights before that at 185. But since he's been in the UFC, he's been competing, or at 205. But since he's been in the UFC, he's been competing at 185. And I don't think he's not one of those dudes who gets to be like 235, 240 in his cut. He's not like a giant light heavyweight, right? He's on the bigger side for 185. So I'm interested to see how he'll do. In general, when you think about people who are changing weight classes, if you're a striker, you want to go up in weight because then you're faster and you get to the punch faster than the other guy. If you're a grappler, you tend to want to go down in weight because now you're bigger and stronger and you can impose your physicality on your will a little bit better. Drew Dober's been around for a minute. Drew Dober versus Terence Mckinney should be a good fight. I don't know that much about Mckinney. I think he's pretty new to the UFC, but the performance that I have seen have been interesting. They've been good fights, right? Drew Dober's been around for a while, and he has done a very, very good job of making. Good damn, I'm falling asleep. That's no good. He's done a very good job of making great fighters look average, right? Alex Pereira, Bruno Silva. Honestly, I don't know either of these dudes. I probably actually do know them, but like I don't know them like that. Matthew Sullenberger versus AJ Fletcher, 9-3 versus 9-0. That's interesting that the guy's 9-0. The problem with that is who has he fought? So when you see someone who's undefeated, what you need to do is you need to go through their record and check the records of the people they've fought. Check the names of the people they've fought. And if you don't recognize their names, you need to go check the records of the people that they fought. Because if you are 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 10-0 with all first round knockouts, that doesn't tell me you're good. It tells me you haven't fought anybody good. You might be amazing, but we don't know because you haven't fought anybody good enough to stop you for long enough to prove it. Okay. JJ Aldridge versus Jillian Robertson. That's a fight I'm actually interested in, mostly because I find Jillian Robertson interesting. She's 10-6, but she's been working with Dean Thomas since the dawn of time. Like, I think since she was like a teenager or a kid or something like that, right? So regardless of whether Jillian Robertson wins or loses, she's like a pick line to the mind of Dean Thomas. Dean Thomas pioneered the sport, coached at ATT forever. I don't know if he still coaches at ATT or if he just coaches in the area now, but I'm interested anytime you see somebody who's been with a coach of that high level from such an early age. Trevin Jones versus Jared Basharet. I don't know either of these guys. Oh, but sorry, there's Javid. Javid Basharet is 11-0. Same thing. Hopefully he's really, really good, but I'm interested in why there's no zeros there. But I haven't looked into his record. Whatever. Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson's an interesting fighter. If you like grappling, he's a very, very interesting fighter. He does a lot of stuff to force grappling exchanges. I've never heard of the guy Kamuela Kirk that he's fighting, but I really, really like Damon Jackson's style. He's from Oklahoma, I think, and he trains in Dallas, right? Oklahoma is a big wrestling state. Damon Jackson brings a good wrestling style to MMA, right? And he's done it to some of the best people, right? He's not to some of the best people. He's done it to some very damned good people. They call him the Leech, right? Probably he sucks the energy out of him. He's training at Fortis MMA, which means he's going to have really, really good coaching. What's homeboy's name there? Safe Saud. That's a beautiful facility. If you've never had the opportunity to go there, it's a really, really aesthetically pleased. It's small. It's very small compared to a lot of the things you would see, but it's a beautiful facility with wonderful artwork around. I like to travel to the gyms whenever I can. Oh, here's why. Here's why I cared so much about Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson's first fight back to the UFC, he fought Mirsad Bektik. Mirsad Bektik has had clout for years, right? Like the who's who of people who watch and study MMA have been paying attention to Mirsad Bektik. He out-grappled Mirsad Bektik. Mirsad's a grappler. He out-grappled him and then strangled him with a rear naked choke, or with a guillotine choke. All right, then he lost to Ilia Topuria, whatever. Won a decision against Charles Rosa. Like all this is respectable. Well, I hope I can stop yawning before Leah gets on. Hey, in about 25 minutes, I'm going to go live Origins of an Expert with Leah Knight-Letson. She is one of 2 women in the history of mixed martial arts to come from Wisconsin and reach the UFC. 2. The other one being Rose Namajunas, world champion. I don't know what that says about Leah, but I do know only 2 people have ever done it, and that's fucking impressive. Sabina Mazo, I don't know why I know her name, but I know that she's a noteworthy individual. And I really, really like Miranda Maverick, right? She was working on like her master's degree up until pretty recently, and she lives like on a farm or some shit. Like the girl's farm strong and built like a bodybuilder. She's a brick shit house. Dolce Gamboula, I hear people reference him quite a bit when he has fights coming up. I have not done my due diligence in looking to him myself. But if you're interested in who should you watch on this card, I would tell you should pay attention to Dolce Gamboula. Dolce Gamboula. I don't know anything about Cody Brundage, the guy he's fighting. Guido Canetti's 8-7. The next fight is Chris Montijo. That's the dude who stepped in short notice to fight Sean O'Malley, right? Whoever O'Malley was supposed to fight fell through last minute, and Homeboy stepped up to fight O'Malley. Good on him. And then Guido Canetti, I was paying attention to him for a minute. I didn't know. Oh, he's 42. I think he's Argentinian. Yeah, he's from Argentina. That record doesn't show. Oh yeah, he's just on a bad run. He's a good fighter though. I've seen enough of him. Like even in these losses, he's not some scrub. Like you should pay attention to Guido Canetti. Also, to be fighting at 42 years old when you're fighting at 135 pounds is impressive. That's uncommon to be able to maintain your status as an athlete, your ability as an athlete to that advanced of an age. It's becoming more and more common. When I first started MMA, a champion in his mid-30s was unheard of. We all looked at Anderson Silva and couldn't understand how he could be so good at the age he was. We all thought like, oh, they all just fade out and they don't blah, 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 blah. I was looking today. In the UFC, the top 25 fighters, only 4 of them are under the age of 30. That's strange. Typically, in heavier weights, you see guys fighting at a lighter date, right? You see older men and women capable of carrying that athleticism at a more advanced age, right? And largely that's because it takes some time to figure out how to use your body. You ever see a kid who grows really, really quick, right? And then they've all like weird and awkward and shit, right? Heavyweights tend to take a little bit more time to mature into their body. So you see a 21-year-old heavyweight who looks good already, like, yo, what's he going to be in 10 years? But if you look at the heavyweight division, those guys are all like 35 to 40. Not a lot of them are on the younger end of this. But when then you go down to bantamweight and you see that Guido Canetti is still competing at bantamweight at 42 years old, that's interesting. Frankie Edgar. I think Frankie's 39. I'm making up Frankie's age, but it's somewhere in that age, range. It's very unusual that Frankie is still able to move like he does and fight at the level he does at the weight he does, right? And then your last fight of the night, or your first fight of the night, is actually a light heavyweight bout between Tefan and Yukui, who's another one of those dudes that people talk about. But I think he's one of those guys, I think he's like a judoka that hits super hard or something like that. And it's like one of those, just shuts your lights out right away. No. Yeah, this guy is one of those guys that people were talking about, but I don't entirely remember why. That being said, his opponent, Azamat Murzakanov, is 10-0 at 32 years old, and I believe he's fighting out of Dagestan. It may not be Dagestan, but it is Russia either way, right? Usually, yeah, whatever. He fights out of Russia. Usually these Russian guys have a lot more fights than their record displays. The reason I say that is because they compete in combat sambo. Combat sambo is tournament-style fights. So one of my training partners here is a world champion. Is a world champion in judo, and he did sambo for a little while, combat sambo. And he said, I do 3 sambo tournaments. And I said, okay, how many fights you do in a tournament? He says, 4. 4 effectively MMA fights per day in order to win those 3 tournaments, right? It's crazy. So what you'll see all the time is you'll see these, you'll see Americans get flown over to Russia, and they'll be fighting some guy who's like 2-0, 3-0, 5-1, 1-0. Maybe it's his debut, right? And he'll beat the ever-living shit out of the American. And then you do a little bit more investigating, and you find out the guy has 230 combat sambo fights, right? He's been fighting forever, but he didn't get into professional mixed martial arts until recently. That kind of thing. I bet you Azamat Murzakanov is one of those guys. All right. This has been new and exciting. I'm Josh Moody. Thank you for tuning in. In 20 minutes, we're going live with Leonidas Letson, Origins of an Expert. Check it out.